Alrighty, welcome to the virtual brown bag of February 25th of 2021. As usual, quick disclaimer that we do record these meetings so that later we can, catch up if we've missed something, or maybe we want to review some of the things that were shared before, or people who couldn't make it, they are able to watch these later. So if you're going to be sharing something, just make sure that you don't share anything that's going to potentially cause you any kind of trouble. What is this virtual brown bag thing? It's a place where we get together every week and we share tips and tricks, experiences, things that we've learned the hard way, and maybe we can help somebody else, not go through the same kind of pains that we've been through, frustrations or difficulties. Maybe you're trying to get something done and you don't quite get how to do it, or you found a way to do it, but it doesn't seem kind of right. Well, share it with us here. Maybe somebody else has gone through the same kind of trouble, or we can just do a live troubleshooting of the issue and try to, help out however we can. Not supposed to be a one-way conversation. It's really supposed to be a, everybody just pitching in and taking it from there. So we do this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time here on Skype. Feel free to share the link to the meeting and to the website with, coworkers, friends, people who could benefit from these discussions. We have shared on a number of topics, sometimes very deeply technical, sometimes more like soft skill type of things. It's really whatever people feel like talking about, either passionately or because there's a purpose. Hey, I'm trying to get this thing here and I don't know anything about this topic. Does anybody know anything about it? Just bring it up. Feel free to do so. We have a virtualbrownbag.com website where you can always find the link to join the meeting, as well as a link to the previous videos, the previous recordings. You just go back there, you scroll to the page, and you're going to find the links with a little blurb on the main topics that we talked about those days. And that is about it. Let's roll. How are you guys doing today?
I'm good.
Yeah, cool. Everybody on the south side of things came out of the freezing weather last week with minimal damage, I hope.
We didn't have any damage really. We did have about I'm in New Orleans, but we had our pipes freeze, but it was actually fine because like I had to I got up in the morning, like turned on, like was like there's no water, so I was like on the phone with the plumber about it. And just like talking through, it's like there's only like about a foot of pipe that's like comes out of the ground before it goes to the house. It's like
Hmm.
I was like, oh okay, well let me just go out there with a heat gun and just zap it and like heat the pipe directly. And yeah, it was like a minute of that and just started pouring.
Okay.
It was fine for us.
Yeah, for me, I was glad that I didn't have any major thing going. The only thing was it's the first time that I'm living in a house that has a sprinkler system. And while I closed the valve, I didn't uh, empty the chamber and didn't adjust the pressure. Apparently, that's another thing you have to do. You have to lower the pressure. I didn't know any of those things. So when I opened the valve back up, the thing just popped, right? The top thing there on the backflow. And then a lot of water coming up. I'm like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And that's when I did the research and it's like, oh, yeah, I should have done those things. Yeah, I idea about that. But other than that, it's fine.
Do you, when you're doing that, kind of flushing the sprinkler system, do you flush it with compressed air, or is there something else that should be done?
I have absolutely no idea. Does anybody know any of that? That's the kind of stuff that's like, so I moved in this house like 10 months ago as a rental place, and then I ended up buying a house a couple of months ago. So it's like, oh, there's a sprinkler system. That's pretty cool. It's very convenient. Other than that, I know nothing about it. So
That's
I really don't know what I don't know.
yeah. That's
Yeah, I think if you from what I know about that, if you have the standing water in the sprinkler system underneath the ground and the ground freezes, then you could be dealing with a lot of burst pipes, or at least maybe some burst pipes, just from the compressed the compressed water freezing. But I don't know what beyond that, like how you're supposed to like safely void those. So yeah, that's an
It,
interesting problem to have.
it is. Yeah, I didn't. I was kind of concerned because I just hearing what other folks were doing as far as like insulating pipes and all of that, and how I didn't do any of that. I mostly just covered things with a towel and some plastic bag, but I didn't do any insulation of pipes or anything like going up in the attic and make sure that it was all. I just for some reason I didn't look into that. So then I thought, man, I was afraid that coming out of it I was gonna get all sorts of damage. Fortunately, things started like just working. I didn't see any leaks or anything, and the sprinkler was the only thing that's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, that there's something wrong there. So I have somebody scheduled to come up in a couple of days to just review that. And I got it through a referral in the neighborhood for this professional, and I liked it because like three different people said the guy, besides not being too expensive, he shows does a good job, and he explains exactly what he is doing and why he is doing it. I said, okay, great. That's exactly what I need because I have no idea how these systems work. I don't know what I don't know, so I need to learn at least the minimal so that next time I know what this thing is supposed to do. I mean, I didn't even know what that backflow was until I did some research, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what that is doing. All right. And then I've learned that, like in different states, there's also regulations that make you inspect the system every year. And I thought that was a thing for Texas as well. But then chatting with a coworker, he said, no, that's like California does that, but Texas, we are so big into water treatment that that's not a requirement here for that kind of like backflow systems. Like, all right, live and learn. You know, if anything, I'm learning these things out of this situation.
Out of curiosity, it was sort of difficult to hear you because Tony's microphone keeps being scratchy. Is there a way to mute Tony's mic, or Tony, can you mute? Oh, thank you.
There you go. Good,
Cool.
yeah.
So let's start off with like, does anyone have anything that they want to bring up that they'd like to talk about, ask questions about? Because I know we were talking about asynchronous functions and async and kind of how that's confusing in general. Is that something you'd be interested in to like take us through what problems you're having? Kind of we talk about how async applies.
If anything, I would like to speak, although I really don't have a question yet, but if anything, I would like to speak about this identity stuff that we touched last night.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I'm working on a personal project, and comes the moment when I had to decide about the user logging and saving all the data, and I just don't want to mess it up and make it as secure as possible. And I really just don't know what technology to use, or like I don't have any direction on that pretty much.
Right. I mean, in general, and especially because your project is like very MVP from what we talked about. Like, I don't see why you would. I don't see why you would not just use like an OAuth SSL provider, so that way you don't have to deal with storing passwords or doing password resets or doing any of that stuff, because it's not a small undertaking if you want to implement all that from the start and correctly. In fact, let me throw up this diagram and see. Uh, Password. If you search for proper way to implement lost password with Troy Hunt, has an article. Everything you ever wanted to know about building a password reset. I just want to show you this about why it's not particularly easy. So if you are doing it correctly, this here's the sort of way. Here's an article about all the things you need to do just for the password reset feature, right? What you need to keep in mind, what you need to do that article is, I'm sure that's about enumeration risk, right? So you could check if people have, so you make it so people can't use the forget password feature to check if others have an account on the site. Um, it's a lot of stuff, right? Um, so what I generally recommend for pretty much everyone is, see, I'm still scrolling, is to do OAuth SSO. There you go. Here's the flow chart. And if as much as possible, like just offloading that, um, and what that would basically mean is that you your application would have like a login button on it, like login with Google. They click that button, they get a little pop-up that says log in with your Google account, list of their Google accounts. They click their account, or maybe they're already logged in, and then they get redirected into your website and you're in. The way it works, basically, is you set up a project with Google, right? And you let Google know that it can redirect to your site, and you give it a list of sites that's of URLs that it's okay redirecting to within that project. And then you have a secret key that Google gives you, and then your project you have the login button has your project ID embedded in it, and when someone logs in, clicks that button, they're directed to Google's site. But then after Google is complete, it redirects the person back to your site, and it sends them, as part of the redirection, a new token that Google generates, right? Now your application, this will typically actually happen within the Google JavaScript code, is they'll take that token and now send it to your server. Now your server grabs that token, does some quick validation on it, and says, yes, this came from Google. I can verify that because of cryptography, and I have this secret key that only Google could have created this. And what does it say inside the token? It says that person's username is gmauer@gmail.com. And at that point, I look in my users table. If there isn't a gmauer@gmail.com, then I either create it or send them into the registration workflow. If that does exist, then I, load up whatever permissions they have, make my own JWT token or something, and return it to them, and now they can pass that around with requests. So that's the basic idea, and that's the absolute simplest thing you could do, and that I would recommend doing as long as you can possibly get away with it. Now, identity will do a lot of this stuff for you, of the OAuth handling stuff. It, as far as I remember, and it's broken up into a lot of modules, so maybe not all of it does it. Claudia, maybe you can, or anyone else here has a more recent memory of it. But I don't think all the modules have to do with persisting. I think some of the modules have to do with just the validation step. So you can kind of mix and match there. Because I mean, like, maybe you don't even have a users table, right? Maybe anyone can use it, and you just need your site, and you just need to know what their email is, right?
Right.
And if you do that, then you don't really need a users table, right? You just can save their email directly as their ID, which is not a great idea, but it's fine. So, like, if you do that, you wouldn't need a lot of the ASP identity stuff. But then a lot of it that it does provide is like, okay, well, you know, if you're gonna create a user, that means you do need a users table, even if you're not storing passwords in there or doing validation or anything like that. Now, the built-in ASP.NET Identity stuff, like if you grab it, if you like start a new project and everything that comes with it, does actually contain code for like creating your own password and stuff like that, and doing password resets to some degree. So you could get away with that, but you have to go all in on using all parts of their stack then. So like typically entity framework or whatever parts of it that you don't want to use entity framework, you have to hook in with other tools, and it is a big deal. Um, so yeah, I mean like SSO stuff is the simplest way. I mean that's like when I was working at the boot camp, the boot campers would typically, it would take them between 2 to 3 days to figure that out, and after that, they would just people would be logged into their application. Um, Again, it depends on what your needs are, but 2 to 3 days. So we're talking about 10 to 30 hours, right? 16 to 30 hours to figure that out. Um, and that's not bad for authentication. Um, but then it's worth saying that that just does authentication, not authorization, right? So that tells you who the person is. That doesn't tell you what they can access. And if you want to know, if you want what they can access, then you need some sort of user management facility, and that's where most applications will just kind of build their own table of users with a list of which permissions they have, and then that's what you're using to create like a security token that you pass back to them. Again, I'm not sure that that's where you want, like, if you can start that way in your application, it totally makes stuff easier later on down the line. But it might be like, for example, in your case, where you're trying to build like a little side project on the side for people to use at some point, it might be worth your while to choose the harder approach of just punting on this whole thing as long as possible and then solving it later, because you want to get to the more interesting stuff that is core to your application as soon as possible and prove out those ideas, rather than like, you know, spending spending 40 hours getting stuck in like setting up authentication, and only after 40 hours starting to work on actual stuff, and then you find out that like the core idea isn't quite what you wanted it to be. So that's up to you to decide the trade-off.
If I can
Yeah,
throw something
and okay, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, a lot of identity and authorization providers have in-memory providers that you can plug in. So you can get your application structured in a way that's going to be compatible with things that you may need later, but you don't need now. And it would kind of lessen the onboarding cost, but give you the benefit of not having to rip up everything when you realize you actually need it.
Yeah. I I don't know if because you're working in .NET. I don't know what their whole thing is with that, but yeah. Uh, oh yeah, they have ASP.NET identity.inmemory, so that's a thing. I don't know. I haven't used it though, so I can't tell you more about it.
Mm.
Yeah, I was gonna say that my main goal right now is just to I guess just create a quick authentication uh, system for the application so I can, start implementing things that, oh, this, you cannot see this, you can see that, or this is your profile, this is your projects, your stuff. So I was pretty much just hoping to get the quickest thing right now, but then I'm thinking also long term. Um, how much code do I have to change if I implement this when it really comes the time to like implement the actual system? How much code do I have to change? How difficult is it gonna be, and all of that? But yeah, right now I'm going with little steps because the project is so big that I'm pretty much just going by parts.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. I still think that there's value in just diving right into just stubbing out a user that you're assuming and doing some of the core logic first, just to try out the idea, get a feel for it. And I mean, yeah, you will need authentication at some point, but you also need motivation in order to work on this project. And fiddling with authentication doesn't keep most people motivated, right? That that's kind of where I would say to consider your trade offs.
There are
I
aspects
agree
of
with that.
authorization that are interesting from like mapping authorization to the architecture of your software system as well. So there may be some sort of a virtuous cycle once you start thinking about the structure of permissions and the structure of functionality that may just kind of appear even if you don't actually write it, just to think about it up front so that things are easier long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, all this stuff makes it easier, no problem. It's just don't I also don't want you to get stuck in this land in this stuff. It's something you can come back and fix later. It's just more of a pain, but it's also a pain to get a while along and then to realize that you did a bunch of infrastructure work for something that you're not really gonna care to continue you doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, Claudio's just nodding gravely there.
Yeah, I'm thinking on the current project that I'm working on and some of the lessons that I've been bringing forward, which goes around the authorization part, right? So the authentication, yes, you may use any of these systems. That's one thing, but the authorization seems to be the part where we spend the most time on. So what I've been doing is advocating for like permission-based authorization, right? So I don't care who the user is, what role the user is assigned to. I just want to make sure that does the user have this permission? Because that way I can lock down access to components, to features, to modules based on that permission. And then from the backend side of things, we are like packaging permissions into policies, which is something that's actually .NET Core has some mechanisms to enforce that or to help implement that. So that's a direction that we've been taking. That I know that many of my previous projects we've gone that route and it works really well. Because then we use like things like roles as a way to just, of course, make it easier to set up new users, right? So we say, oh, this user is a buyer, so buyers usually have all of these permissions. But then we can either grant new permissions to that one specific user or revoke certain permissions that the user would otherwise get through that role association. And then, so we use roles to help with that part of user setup and also to help drive UX, right? So a user may be both a buyer and a seller, but they are not doing those tasks at the same time. They are either doing buyer stuff or they are doing seller stuff. So the app should be able to let the user select, hey, right now I would like to wear my buyer hat. So reshape my UX experience, UX based on the things that I do as a buyer. So that's just something I've been nodding because it's just making me think of all these things that we're currently doing.
Yeah. Um, hey, welcome, Robert. We're talking about identity frameworks and implementing authentication and authorization first and things like that. Um, I don't know what are your thoughts on it, Jose? Like you understand how we're kind of saying like there are certainly trade offs to consider, but it's stuff you have to determine.
I'm definitely gonna try the Google SSO because, well, first of all, I would like to learn how to use it, and
It is useful.
if I can do something in 2 days, that will be great. If I can just implement some quick authentication system, like 2 to 3 days. That would be great. Instead of learning all the identity stuff, and uh, how to use it, and also like what else comes with it. Like now, don't need to create tables and all of that, which at this point I'm not doing. I'm not willing to yet because I'm working mostly on the UI part. So yeah,
But
definitely.
right, so you will have to stub those out. But yeah, I mean, you still so you have to think about it from the point of view of like, okay, you get it to the point where you know what their username is. You could end that workflow there. The question that like an identity framework might be asking though is like, okay, well, how do you want to find out if it's a known user or if it's a new user, right? Like at that point, you need a database. You can't solve it any other way. You need some way to process the fact that you knew users before, and that's something that like you can't get from an SSO provider. You would have to go to a full like identity provider like Cogito or Cloud Identity or something like that. Yeah, and I think that's kind of where you run into that. So, but if you're not worried about persisting that stuff, yeah, you don't need to. Now, I will say, like, I just caution when I say when I say that you wanna, it's 2 days or 3 days. I'm talking about boot camp grads on their final project, boot campers on their final project. They're working, you know, 8 to 11 hours a day. So, like, that's not the same thing as you spending time on stuff after work. It wouldn't be 2 or 3 days then if you don't know how to do it correctly. Yeah. Um,
Yep, yep.
yeah. Um, and I know you were talking about you wanting to use Dapper. I do. There is a ASP.NET Core Identity Dapper on NuGet, but also their package source is not is like their project link is to a broken GitHub repo. So that's a little suspicious. Um,
Yeah, like I say, it's just an idea because
yeah.
for the most part, I think I just use adult IDEO.net. I'm pretty comfortable with it, so I don't know if that will be an option in the future or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, but like that's the issue. Like, all the entire point of thing conversation is framed as okay, well, why do you need a database anyway? And you only really need to do that if you are going to persist information about users. And if you don't, then you kind of don't need that. um, cool. Anyone have anything else they want to talk about?
Well,
Also, oh, go ahead.
I'm making a fun game for front end developers to practice front end development, and I'd love for all you to try it. And it's at jamstackattack.com. In your free time, check it out. I'm on Coding Coach. Give it a try. See what you think. I'd love to know.
Yeah. Do you want to like talk?
I mean, if anybody wants to share their screen right now, pull it up and play some games, I would love that. But don't feel pressured.
Well, sure. But how about like, why don't we start with like, you want to tell us a little bit about kind of the idea behind it?
Sure. I don't think right now there's a good place for front-end developers to go to practice with bite-sized challenges and exercises or puzzles that are fun that teach them HTML, CSS, and JavaScript at the same time. So I built this thing to make it really fun, hop in, hop out, spend 2 minutes, 15 minutes, do a bunch, but just mini games via something like a Fall Guys game of, hey, you hop in, you see the others are here, eventually multiplayer, but you need to practice. There's front-end mentor for projects, but while you're doing projects, you need to also just be aware that you don't know everything. So learn, practice, get hints, that sort of thing. It's been missing. I wish I had it, so I decided to make it.
Okay. Anybody want to try it?
Who's daring enough?
Yeah. I could grab it and try it, but I'm going to start writing generators right away. Anyone? All right. I'll do it. I'll take a shot.
All right.
All right. So what this
Cool.
game teaches you: put forward code in the right order, pause and study code once sorted. Rhythm inherent in the code you'll soon. Wait. I think that's supposed to be inherent.
That's probably right. Misspelling there. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of a fun little way to set it up. I never do function keywords anyway. Get rid of it. Let's see. All right. So the return's going to go next. We're reversing the string in place. Okay. No. So return's not going to go last because we're doing that. Wait. I don't understand. How would any of this mean? You can't reverse a string in place. Okay, so I'm a little confused by this, like, because a string is immutable in JavaScript. So how would you be reversing a string in place? It's not like an array or a list. So like, is this a trick question?
It's not, I promise.
Well, I mean, it's just like not a thing that's possible. You do foo equals whatever, right? It's not like you could do foo1 equals, b, right? Foo is still whatever. So it's not possible to reverse a string in place. It's possible to reverse an array.
Well, what does string.split do?
It returns a new array, so you're not doing anything in place though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, still, so you're overthinking this, and that's why sometimes it's fun to watch developers do it. So sorry for the name of the function, but I promise if you put them in the right order, it will work.
All right. So all right. Now we're back to this. Okay. So return str split. I mean, that's gonna split it up by words. But that's also, what do we have by words that we need to do? So if we do that, okay. So this will be the backwards words, and then we join the words back together. Sure. And you split it into the characters. And then you reverse the characters and then join the characters. So then, wait, how are we defining reverse then? Because, I mean, that, but. Okay. All right, so I think that, that's my confusion. It's some sort of, it's not the standard definition of the either in place or reverse, right? Because it would keep the the words would be in the same spot. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Start a new game. Drag the lines of code into the correct order. Okay. I mean, I don't know how this works, but how view works, but I assume it's something like this, maybe. Let's see. Counter equals that. I mean, that can't go on there, so it would have to be like this. I don't know, that. I hope. Wait, why would that be a problem? So you've got counter, which is an object, and counter is a property of there which has 0. Oh, but there's no comma there. So that wouldn't be right. Okay, I'm confused about that as well. Like, how would this work? Because like if you do this, that's not valid. Well, no, that is valid syntax, I guess. But like so is. Wait. No, okay. So if I did this, but then the data function's not doing it, so maybe that's what view wants. No,
Hmm.
I don't get it. So do that in there. Okay, so counter is something that has a data method, and when you call it, it's returning something with counter. Okay, got it. Cool.
Mm.
All right.
Cool. Play that minigame.
Okay, play another one. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, use the object to put a value to cover the WW. Oh, 07. Okay. Oh, okay. I see. So we're okay. So we're just doing obj.map, obj.bond.map, and arrow n divided by 2, and that way 14 becomes 7, but the other ones stay the same. And then we'll map. We don't even need to do that. We just do this. Cool. Okay, cool. This is use the object to output a value. Use obj to output this value 1. Okay, so ob. Okay, so oh, but I can't do object.keys or something because it starts me with obj. Ooh, that's kind of fun. So how could you use that to output the value 1? I guess I don't know. Obj dot translations dot de dot index of O, like that. What was the idea? Is that what the intent of this is, or?
So do you see the answer in green below? At least another answer.
Oh, okay. I see. That was the idea.
But you did it. So cool.
Okay.
There's many ways.
Yeah. All right. So these are fun.
Try. Yep, go ahead. I was like, try one more minigame if you want.
Okay. All right. Write code to fulfill the instructions. The opening tag of a form element when the action refers to a file called submit PHP and uses the post method. So form action equals PHP equals post. I guess that's all we really need. What else we left?
Maybe it just didn't like my bad for not catching double and single quotes. But you got it right. Good job.
Oh, okay. Oh, are single quotes valid technically?
No, they're not. I just
Okay.
what I'm doing to see if this game is a thing is
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah.
nicely done.
That's
Yeah.
neat.
If you go back to the list of games, it's on the left-hand side, the last link back to the list of games.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, like what's your list look like? Okay. So you got like
So you
object.
did object puzzles. This one's, if you want to try it, this one's fun.
It's like head-to-head typing. Ooh. All right. I'm not gonna do that. That's fun. I mean, yeah, I could see that being like a nice little like trainer. Um, obviously there's a little stuff to work out, but yeah, cool.
Thanks for trying.
Always happy to have people making more tools for people to learn stuff.
Yeah, and if you need more, the links show me other games on the left-hand side.
Okay.
Is a whole bunch of others. Maybe you've heard some of them.
Oh,
None of them were made by me.
These are like, yeah. Because I remember like Flexbox Froggy. This is a new one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking it out. And yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Cool. Anyone want to talk about anything else? I've got one thing I could bring up, but
Go for it, then.
All right. So let's see. I actually so the new job is a lot of Python. Most of their infrastructure is in Python. And I know Python okay. It's not my strongest language, but it's the one I've been using kind of for scripting a lot. Even though I'm actually trying to stop using it for scripting a lot. But Python it can be. I mean, it's at the same time an interesting language and also like the least interesting language because most of like this most of the stuff in Python, like it kind of makes sense, and they discourage doing anything fancy and stuff. There are the interesting part like comes in like when you like start poking at the edges and like trying to understand how some of the stuff in it is implemented. And so I ran into this. Just new scratch pad. Python. Okay. All right. So I ran. So I was playing around with some Python yesterday, and I realized. So one of the things I realized is when you declare a class.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
Right now,
I'm
I'm still seeing your browser. Is that what we should be seeing?
That is not it.
Okay.
Emacs it is. So when you create a class in Python, this stuff right here, yeah. So this is how you normally do it, right? So do foo, right? And then it print moving, right? So something like that, and then you could do foo.do foo, right? So the interesting thing is inside the body definition of class, like I was trying to put all this stuff because I never quite understood how classes were made. Like you could do stuff like this, right? Bar equals 1, 2, 3 in there, and that makes it so basically bar is a static function. Foo.bar you can access, right? Print that. But then it's also, I believe, accessible as an instance variable. So let me make it. Oh, yep. Make it so it's not an error at least. That results output. Yeah. So. Yeah. So like that. Yeah. So you can like do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Both of them interesting. So and that kind of hints at something more interesting going on. And then I tried to like do stuff like in here, like global bar. Well, what if you have bar 5 up here, right? So that is right here telling it that I'm going to grab the bar. I'm actually going to motivate the bar from the global scope.
Okay.
Was someone saying something, asking questions? Where are we? Foo has no attribute. That's actually kind of odd. Okay, well, I was trying a slightly different thing before, but so here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think is interesting. It might be non-local. Maybe that's what you could do. Yeah. Non-local. See if that works. Nope. I'll figure out what exactly is. But either way, what is actually going on here is interesting because I started digging into like the documentation, and essentially when you do class foo, anything you put in here in the body just gets run in a new execution frame as if it was a, like its own method. In some ways, class foo is not all that different from def foo, right? From defining a function, right? But what happens then is after that has finished writing, it takes everything that was in its locals declaration and creates a new class and makes everything that was in its locals the attributes of the new class. So you can do stuff like this. If bar equals 5, def bar 5, return. It's 5, right?
Probably want double equals there instead of single equals.
Yeah. And you could do an else here, right? This is going to be on my indentation. Pass. Oh. Yeah, so you could do def bar not 5, right? Like conditionally declare other ones. It's not 5, and then you could do stuff print dir foo, right? So what are all the methods are on foo, or all the fields, period, right? Colon. Okay, so I put in there. And so if you see here, you have bar 5 right there. Now, it's a little limited in usefulness because I believe that runs only once. So I did bar equals 4 here and then did that again. It'll give me the same result. Yeah, it's whatever it was at the time that class ran. But this is, so I haven't figured out, like, it feels like there's interesting things you can do here. It also kind of lets you get an idea of how things like method attributes work within Python, because yeah, it just takes that function and churns out a new function that gets bound into the locals. But it is kind of interesting that you can run actual logic in the class definition itself. In fact, let's see if I can do this. Print locals. So when the class gets created, it's, yeah. It's just going to dump out all the locals, which is, here it is, it's that function, basically, right? So, so that's kind of an interesting thing that, I don't know, I think it could have some interesting effects, right? And just ways to think about. Now, and it does make me wonder. Now, I think the Dunder methods, the one with the underscores around them, are treated as special cases. So it's really only this bar 5 that gets moved into there. But actually, I wonder what happens if I do foo itself. So in that case, yeah, it's just a bar 5. So it's the same thing. So it's not quite everything, but it's everything new that was created in the locals namespace gets put into there. So interesting implementation. It's not really like it is in other languages. And I have not figured out how to abuse it horribly yet, but I'm sure I will.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to understand, okay, what are the
Yeah.
ways to use this feature, because I can see how it can get very complicated for people to understand, and how to produce like hard to troubleshoot issues. So there's got to be a reason why this is an option.
Well, I mean, I think it's an option because that's just the way the classes are constructed. Like that's how they figured out to make classes. Now, like this right here would not be a good idea. Like, if you really need to make a conditional class, then it would be a better idea to move the class inside of here, right? If do that, otherwise make a class. I mean, just make different classes. So I'm not exactly. I mean, like, I guess, like, as a construction pattern for classes where there is, most of the class will be the same, but based on, like, some, global debug setting or something, that we're going to emit some different functions or some different functions. I could see it being useful there.
So it's okay. So maybe I'm looking at the wrong way. So would this be like similar to compiler directives?
Well, no, because it is happening at runtime. But this right here is happening at the time that the class is defined. So it's, I mean, I guess the C# equivalent would be like a hook to when the class definition is loaded into the app domain.
Okay, got it.
So when an assembly is loaded and then but I mean, like, I think there's ways to load an assembly and then pluck out a class from it. So maybe that's a little bit more.
I think it would be more like if we are using, say, dynamic in C#, where the first time you run it, it builds stuff.
Yeah.
But then if you make changes later, you have to recompile. So it would be similar, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure I'll find it. Like, I only understood this mechanism like yesterday.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll get somewhere with it at some point.
All right.
But like, they're definitely, it's like kind of interesting. It's an interesting way of doing classes that, I mean, certainly works for Python, but also kind of like gives some understanding about some of the other stuff that's going on under the hood there, right?
Right.
Yeah, and like how, again, like method, like function decorators in Python, where's my keys? Like, which are like at whatever def somefunk pass, right? So what is that doing? Well, whatever itself is just a function. Like decorators in Python are just def whatever. It takes a function as an input, and instead of that, it'll return a lambda, right? Something like that. So if I do this, and let's see, I do print foo somefunk. What do we, none type object is not callable. Ooh, I don't even know what that relates to. Line 20. That's that line. So I am not sure. Oh, because I need a return in there. Python. Yeah. Okay. Now it prints. Never mind. So like, okay, well that makes sense. Well, now why that happens, right? Because this just takes this function and then returns this other function which gets named somefunk. Right? So like, yeah. So, and actually, so that doesn't even actually get put in the locals, right? Because I'm not putting the locals right here, and there's no somefunk there. Oh, there, yeah, yes. Okay, there it is. It's right here. So it's somefunk. It's right here, somefunk, and what it is a function that's just this lambda, but then but then there's just this little bits of metadata associated with it. And yeah, and that gets interesting because I mean Python does have actually the ability to like do stuff like grab the stack frame and then walk up to the stack frames and inspect the locals at other stack frames.
Okay.
So yeah, like maybe that's something you could do where like when you're creating the class, go up one stack frame, grab whatever locals are declared there, and import all of those as methods of the class or something like that. Yeah, like funky little shortcuts like that could be wild.
Yeah. All the potential for mayhem.
Yeah. Anyway, Python. So gonna be doing a lot more of it. Even though I'm
Okay.
actually trying to shift away from it being my scripting language.
Right.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good deal. Yeah, I actually have to get ready for another call myself in just a
And
few.
I got told I don't need to come to the next one.
What was
I said I actually don't because they told me that they invited me by accident and I don't need to come.
that?
Cool.
Good.
Anyone else have any like last 4 minutes stuff they want to talk about? Share.
I can quickly share that at
Anything.
Improving, we just started a two book clubs, one to go over a soft skills book and one to go over a technical book. The technical book that we chose is The Pragmatic Programmer, the 20-year anniversary edition or whatever. So, which is good because I read the first edition 20 years ago. So just, having a chance to go over it and see, oh yeah, that's where I got that one thing from, or as a review, and having that as a collective knowledge building, with the coworkers. That's been interesting.
Cool. All right, everyone.
Oh, all right.
Go.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Enjoy
Yeah,
the
bro.
weekend. See you all next week.